2008 was a very interesting time for Cartoon Network. It sparked the beginning of an era where the station began CN Real, a block of different live-action shows that took the places of cartoons the network was known for. And ever since then, it's been widely known as the dark era of CN. But it's understandable why, because shows like Camp Lazlo, Foster's, and Billy and Mandy were all being cancelled and replaced with The Othersiders, Survive This, and Dude, What Would Happen? So during this time, CN faced a lot of hate from fans because, to put it in perspective, with a few exceptions, Cartoon Network was severely lacking in the former of its name. And for a station that spent years making nothing but phenomenal cartoons, this was very disappointing and somewhat insulting towards fans. I mean, it's understandable for shows to end. They can't go on forever. And if they do, the magic it used to have would most likely be gone. But at least before, fans knew that when one amazing cartoon would end, another would take its place. Though here instead, it would be replaced by an obvious attempt of pandering and the network copying their competition. However, there was a silver lining. In the late 2000s, CN released two of their most acclaimed and beloved cartoons, Chowder and The Marvelous Misadventures of Flapjack. Shows that at the time no one had ever seen before. They were both full of such imagination and interesting writing, characters, and settings. And because these two came out at a time where, aside from live action taking over the industry, they really brought back the heart and soul of the network, proving that when things seemed to be getting corporate and manufactured, the creative minds of C.H. Greenblatt, Thurop Van Orman, and everyone else a part of these shows that made them the way they were, would prevail. But why am I talking about both instead of doing them separately? Well, these two blend perfectly together that when you talk about one, you have to mention or even slightly bring up the other one as well. Because although they were both amazing, they were amazing in different ways. Chowder was a more goofy show that was very self-aware about being a cartoon, while Flapjack was darker and more realistic, and both used a unique art style to capitalize on an identity. For example, with Chowder, all the characters have moving patterns on their clothes, and Flapjack did an interesting thing with the water where the artist made it look like it was made out of cardboard. See, things like these were never really seen before in any cartoons prior, and because of it, it just made the shows interesting to look at. Their art styles didn't really seem like something that would be in a Western cartoon. Now granted, every cartoon has its own unique styles and aesthetics, but with Chowder, the way it presents itself makes it look very foreign, like it takes place in Italy or even South America, and Flapjack's entire world has a very marine and 18th century look to it. Though on the subject of art, both shows would experiment with different types of animation. Aside from traditional 2D, there were also segments with stop motion, puppetry, and CGI. It's very rare for a cartoon to change its animation style so frequently. It could be because the artists don't have experience in that genre, or it was just too expensive. But with Flapjack and Chowder, nearly every episode did something unique with its art, and whether it worked or not, they at least put the effort in and attempted something new, showing how much faith these two were given. However, there was one problem that plagued both of them equally, and that was when they were released. Like I mentioned earlier, Cartoon Network was going through their live action phase, which already got rid of a bunch of viewers, and sadly, these two were in their prime during this era. And again, the only other cartoons at the time were Total Drama and 16s, which targeted a different demographic. So because of these difficult times, Chowder and Flapjack began to suffer, and in August of 2010 marked the end of their short but incredible lives. It was very upsetting because if Cartoon Network didn't lose so many fans from CN Real, these two could have gone on for longer amounts of time. And while it was sad to see them go, they did lead to the creation of shows that managed to take the network out of the rut it put itself into. For example, both Pendleton Ward and J.G. Quintel worked on Flapjack, and went on to create Adventure Time and Regular Show, two of the most well-known cartoons from this generation, as well as Alex Hirsch, who was a writer for the show at the time, went on to make Gravity Falls for Disney Channel, and C.H. Greenblatt received another chance to make his own show with Harvey Beaks on Nickelodeon, although he did kinda get screwed over by the network, so A for effort. So yeah, while Chowder and Flapjack's lives were cut a bit short, they did leave a strong impact on the world of animation, with not only helping in the creation of so many good shows, but they also prevented Cartoon Network from selling out and no longer being the channel everybody would watch for cartoons. And over the years, we've seen the network understand their fault and have done away with live action and are constantly giving us more good shows, though they may have the occasional scheduling problem with a certain controversial reboot. And you know, maybe it's a good thing their lives weren't the longest. After watching things like Over the Garden Wall and Gravity Falls, sometimes shorter is better. With a series that isn't too long, it can make it easier to say there weren't moments your interest began to fade or just started to go downhill. Sure, Chowder and Flapjack may have had 1 or 2 episodes worth of skip, and every show does, but by looking at these two as a whole, they had vastly more episodes worth rewatching than passing over. And by looking at the upcoming shows and pilots CN has been giving us. It's nice to see that, aside from them giving many creative minds the ability to pitch interesting ideas, when Adventure Time and other shows come to an end, they'll be going back to replacing cartoons with more cartoons with equal or even greater promise.
This demon life's got you in its way.